G'day. How much does an F1 driver make? Well, there's wild speculation, but in this video, I'll give you my best guess on what I think the 20 drivers are earning in season 2024. A number of these drivers are some of the highest paid sports people in the world. They risk their lives every week, they're incredibly skilled, and all of them have spent a heck of a long time getting to where they are today. Let's start off with the number one, Max Verstappen, reportedly on 55 million euros a year. Now, is there a list where you can go and find the exact figures? No. Why? Well, teams aren't required to report on what drivers make. And certainly if you asked a driver what their salary was, or a team principal what they were paying their drivers, they wouldn't tell you. But by asking around in the paddock and speaking to others in the know, you normally get a pretty good picture, because another team principal will gladly speculate on what a driver for another team is making. Next up, Lewis Hamilton of 40 million euros, Charles Leclerc at 30 million, Lando Norris on 20 million, and I've got George Russell and Fernando Alonso both on 18, Sergio Perez from Red Bull 14 million, Carlos Sainz Ferrari 12 million, Valtteri Bottas on 10, Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly on 6, Oscar Piastri's new contract, I've got him down at 6 million, Daniel Ricciardo, hard to work out what Daniel's on, nobody's too keen to talk too much about that, but I'm guessing 5 million. Kevin Magnussen, 5. Alex Albon and Lance Stroll, both on 3 million, but I think you'll find that Alex is due for a big bump up shortly. And then 3 drivers on 2 million, Nico Hülkenberg, Zhou Guanyu and Yuki Tsunoda, and Logan Sargent bringing up the rear at a lazy 1 million euros a year. Once again, that's speculative. Any list you see anywhere is exactly that, because nobody gets the full picture. So what does a driver have to do for that money? Well, the obvious thing is drive the car at 20 races, plus maybe testing pre and post season. But there's so much more. Some of them will have in their contract that they need to do simulator work at the factory. There'll be certain sponsor promotions written into their contracts. Lewis might have a few per year, Yuki Tsunoda might have a lot, and those are negotiated when a driver re-signs an agreement. As part of their contracts, drivers have to wear team kit because, of course, most of the attention is on these 20 drivers, and a photo of Max wearing a Red Bull shirt is worth X amount of dollars to the sponsor. But some drivers have negotiated to wear their own clothing in. Lewis Hamilton is the obvious example. He wears his own choice of clothing every day to the track, and sometimes when he leaves the track. Now that's negotiated by Lewis. Zhou Guanyu and Lando Norris wear their own kit in on Thursdays typically. And other drivers like Charles Leclerc and Valtteri Bottas will wear their own clothing in on days that they've negotiated. But teams like Aston Martin have an arrangement with Boss, so their drivers will wear in Boss on some days. Beluti sponsors Alpine, so you'll see both Esteban and Pierre in Beluti clothing. Hugo sponsoring V-Carb means that Daniel and Yuki are often seen in that kit. And Palm Angels sponsors Haas, which means we see Nico and Kevin dressed in their kit. And what of those outfits of Lewis? Well, I figure he's being paid to wear most of them. And what might Lewis earn for wearing one of those outfits? Well, there wouldn't be too many people that know, by the way, but I'd take a punt being a marketing man, and I don't know, 5,000 to 15,000 euros might be a fair range. And of course, he may get to keep that outfit if he's negotiated that. And when you look at what Lewis does, he is a tremendous influencer. He could sell a lot of this outfit, or this outfit, or this outfit, particularly if the person looking at that picture can find out where to buy it. On the subject of clothing, let's go to Daniel and Lando. They both have their own merchandise. And would they be setting that up, getting it made, selling it themselves? I'm guessing no. What typically would happen in this instance is Daniel and Lando would have input on the design, certainly, but they'd have a design team, probably from a clothing manufacturer, who would produce the items, with Lando and Daniel's role being to wear it, promote it, talk it up. Somebody else would be selling it, and they'd be getting a clip on every single piece that they sell. Certainly drivers don't want to be having lots of staff in different areas that they can't, I guess, keep a very close eye on. They're better off taking a small clip on the way through, doing it in volume, and knowing that there's no risk for them. And then there are drivers that have their own personal sponsors, and typically a manager will field inquiries from businesses like, say, Hawker's Sunglasses that sponsor Pierre Gasly. Zhou's management team would have spoken to Dior and Lululemon because he has private sponsorships with them. Sergio Perez is sponsored by Telcel. Fernando Alonso has Kumoa, his own sunglasses brand, sponsoring him, and he also has a deal with EMC Jets, which provides him with a level of free private jets throughout the course of the year, and probably a sizable discount on the rest. One of the more interesting ones would be Valtteri Bottas. He has an arrangement with IncyJets, which would definitely be along the same lines as Fernando, where he gets some sort of credit to use with EasyJet. And you might also have seen Valtteri Bottas's Uber promotion. What would he have earned from that? Hard to tell. I'm guessing 20,000 to 100,000 euros might be a fair range. Just depends on what length of time and how much work he had to do, but certainly I think Uber would be very happy thus far with the results. Other avenues of revenue for drivers would be private appearances. And a good example might be up in corporate suites at a track where a driver will come up for 10 minutes and be interviewed by someone. And what would they earn from that? Anywhere from 5 to 30,000 euros might be a fair range. Obviously, the lower you are on the totem pole, the lower the fee you can command. But it's something that's quick and easy, and all they have to do is talk about their lives. And after all, they are experts on that. What about deals with TV networks? Yes, I was aware of a deal with Ziggo Sports that Max Verstappen had, and he was paid X amount of dollars per year, or euros, to front up and give Ziggo Sports either a first interview or more information than perhaps he would offer to other media. And I used to sponsor Shane Warne here in Australia with my company, and Shane would always say, for his sponsors, he would always leave the best stories for them. And that was always very valuable. So he'd roll up to media conferences and he'd talk, but when he went and did a private function, he'd wheel out some of those inside stories for those people that were actually paying him. Continuing on with other avenues of revenue, there might be wine deals. Daniel Ricciardo's case in point. Valtteri Bottas has an arrangement for gin and also wine. Signing sessions, you might be aware of my collaborations that I do with drivers. That's not uncommon, and certainly drivers would sign a lot of stuff for the team and get no money for it. So to do a collaboration with, say, me or any other business that provides that sort of product is good value for them. It's guaranteed money and takes them very little time. What about selling their shoes, helmets, race suits? Yes, that goes on from time to time. I'd love to get my hands on a race suit for sale. I think I've got a market now big enough that I'd find someone that would want one of those, and maybe this year that will happen. That's a rough idea of where drivers get their money from, but what is the outgoings for a typical driver? Because that's often what we see, the headline figure, $55 million. But the driver doesn't get to keep all of that. For a start, he's going to lose probably 15 to 20% of that to a manager. So in Max's position, Raymond Vermeulen and his company might be taking 8 to 11 million euros a year. And for that money, that management company will be all over their driver. They will be accompanying him to every race. They'll be fielding inquiries, looking for deals, making sure that the driver is happy, and sometimes interacting with the team to make sure that their driver is being well represented. And does a driver only have one manager? No, a couple of them have more than one. If you take Daniel Ricciardo, he's got CAA, Creative Artists Agency, that does the bigger stuff. And then he's got Blake Friend, who used to be at Red Bull, and now works with Daniel doing some of the smaller stuff, but he's at most races, if not all. And Sergio Perez also has two people looking after him, Julian Jacobi, and this man, Luis, who's at the track most of the time. Now, it's fair to say that a manager is vital in this business, but it doesn't always go well. And if you hark back to Daniel Ricciardo's split with his manager, Glenn Beavis, Glenn ended up getting a sizable payout. He took Daniel to court. He wanted 20% of Daniel's salary that he claimed he negotiated, and then several other contractual fees. It ended up costing Daniel well over a couple of $1 million that he wouldn't have budgeted for. Does a driver pay his own trainer? Well, typically no. The teams pay for the trainers, but what that does mean is that trainer is then answerable to the team, not the driver. In the past, drivers have paid their trainers direct so that they get that 100% loyalty. And what might that cost them? I'm guessing a couple of €100,000 a year, plus travel expenses. Tax, do they pay much tax? Well, I did a video about Monaco recently, and a couple of you said no, they would have to pay some tax in their home countries. But certainly living in Monaco saves them some money. That's why they do it, apart from the weather and the nice proximity to the rest of the world being there. You might look at those figures and say, oh, that's way too much money. Well, it is a lot of money, but they're risking their life. But the other thing to remember too is their careers are typically not that long. Nick de Vries, 6 months. The average, according to this chart here from Formula One points, at the moment is around 8.6 years, which surprised me, but it has been higher than that going back a few years ago. So you're not in this sport for forever. You need to make that money quickly. And if you can save tax by going to somewhere like a Monaco, well, it's not illegal, and many of them do it. Another thing to remember too is that a lot of drivers might have debt from their early days in the sport. It may be that somebody's put money in, helping them get their start, and it costs you a lot of money to get to Formula One. It could be that you're into people for maybe $3, $5, $10 million. And if so, there could well be contracts that say those people who put money in get a certain percentage of your salary when you make the big game, which is Formula One. So what do these drivers spend their money on? The top drivers earning the big bucks, obviously spending the big bucks too. You look at Max with his own aircraft. This would gobble up, I'm guessing, 1.4 million euros a year in maintenance. Flights on top of that, that's got to be a couple of million more per year. But for that big cost, he saves a lot of time, and that has real value to, I guess, anyone in this sport where there's such little downtime. Daniel Ricciardo, well, he's bought some property. He owns a magnificent property in Perth and a big home in Los Angeles. And he also has a nice watch collection, as does Lando Norris, who's amassing some nice cars at the moment too. There is a lot of talk about drivers earning big money in this sport. When you have a look at this list here, the top 10 are earning some mega dollars, but for that they give up a lot. Yes, they get to do something that they love, and that's driving a car around the track, but there's so much more about their job that I'm sure drives them crazy. The endless selfies, no privacy when they're out in public, the negativity that they almost inevitably get no matter who they are on social media, and all of that would take a toll. So I don't begrudge them a cent of what they're earning. They are the best of the best, and I've got to say, they're all grounded. They're all really nice people to work with. No one's rude, no one shouts at you, no one's aggressive. But I guess in these days, with social media being so prevalent, you can't be anything else. I trust you've learnt a thing or two about what the drivers earn and how they spend their money. And if you've enjoyed this video, now is your chance, please, to hit the subscribe button. About half of you are not subscribed, and please like this video. And thank you to my members who chip in some dollars each month to keep the channel going. I now have something else to do, as probably you do, so if you get a moment, check out a whole lot of content and merchandise there. Thanks for watching. Stay passionate. Alex Albon and Lawrence, that's his dad,